Hi everyone!
Welcome back.
You're in
Medbday. So this is part 2 of preparing for med school interviews.
Okay.
How do you prepare for numeracy questions?
So numeracy questions, it can vary from data interpretations to calculations. So you just need to be prepared to be able to interpret graphs, tables, bar charts. These are all common things that might come up. Also with calculations, you need to be able to do mental maths, so practice mental maths. So if you prepared for UK CAT, that should usually come in handy with your numeracy questions, because you should be able to work out things quickly so that you can finish the sum in time. In terms of how to approach the questions, I would say read the questions twice. Even though you might feel like you're running out of time and that yes, we have limited time, especially in MMI, and so you only have around 6 to 8 minutes per station anyway. So even if you feel like you might be running out of time, I would say read the question twice, because if you don't read it properly, you might not know exactly what they're asking you to do. Sometimes they will ask you to speak back to them, so if there's data interpretation, you might have to look at it, do a little sum, and then you might have to speak back to them what your answer was. Sometimes it's just you just answering the questions and then you hand the sheet back. Also, a very important thing that you should prepare in advance for numeracy questions are conversions. Know your conversions from milligrams to micrograms, mLs to litre. Handy. If you know them on top of your head, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to sit there trying to figure out how do I convert these, because that's going to cost you time. So make sure you know how to convert them, and also in your workings out, make sure you're writing the units as you go, so that you know if you've converted it or not. That's how I prepare for numeracy questions.
Can you tell us what the differences are between panel interviews and MMIs?
So with MMIs, as you would know, there's multiple stations and they've all got 6 to 8 minutes limit for each of them, and you rotate between each stations, and each stations would have different questions, each focusing on different areas. With panel interviews, you'll have 3 to 4 interviewers opposite you. Interview sort of lasts around 20 to 30 minutes, and you just have, it's more of a conversation. Panel interviews, MMIs is more of they ask you questions, you answer, and then you move on. They ask you questions and you answer. You don't have time to be thinking about what happened in the previous stations. Always just forget about whatever happened in your previous one. Don't think about what's going to come up next. Just focus on your current station and MMIs. With panel interviews, it's a little bit better, because even if you were nervous at the beginning, after 2 or 3 questions you can relax a bit and you can see how they're responding to your questions. They might ask you questions from what you've said, so it sort of flows more like a conversation in panel interviews. So these, I would say, are the main differences between panel interviews and MMI interviews.
So upon and Sarana, did you have any role play stations in your MMI interviews, and how did you deal with them?
So in MMIs, role plays are quite a common station that come up from time to time, and they can be varied. So they could be a Breaking Bad news station, or it could be an explanation station where you have to explain like a potentially difficult concept to a layman, or it could be something like showing empathy. So that could be another form of a station as well. So in an explanation station, when you go in, they'll probably tell you something like, explain how the kidney works to a patient. And the main thing is to not overcomplicate whatever you're explaining with lots of medical or scientific jargon and words. Just use really simple terms and just break down the steps and try and make the explanations as smooth as possible.
Even though I didn't actually have an explanation station myself, I did see a lot of questions on Medic Portal, for example, on it, and one way was just to practice explaining basic things in layman's terms. So for example, I'd tell my brother, pretend you're 5 years old, and then I'm going to explain to you how to tie your shoelace, or I'm going to explain to you how to fold this piece of paper into an aeroplane, because the basis is they want you to be able to communicate to people of all ages, or for example people who are hard of hearing or who would need a translator. So because you're going to experience that in medicine and throughout your career, so you just need to be able to cross that kind of barrier, and they want to see the start of it, you trying and not just giving up frustrated, and if it doesn't work the first time, because they may, for example, pretend they don't understand what you're saying, that you go back, retrack, and then try and think of a different way of actually getting through and communicating the message that you're trying to give.
One example could be like explain how the kidney works, like I said. So just kind of use simple terms like, oh, it's a filter that kind of removes the bad things in your blood. How do you deal with breaking bad news situations now? Because that's more of a difficult one to handle.
Yeah, so that's, as anything, that will come with practice, but naturally as a human, you know how to deal with bad situations to an extent, and they want to see your way of dealing with it, but then also making sure it's professional, so you're not getting too over emotional if you can help it. Although I have heard of people that have cried in their interviews and they still got an offer, because it shows the empathy actually of a person, and they're just trying to see, do you care and can you respond to the person around you? Because in real life, some patients will appreciate you crying, other patients will not. So it depends on that. So for example, the way I'd approach it, especially now as a third year medic, is a lot of what we call pauses and silences, because it's not your burden, it's that person's having to deal with this despair in their lives. So you're just trying to give them a lot of time to accept what's going on, to acknowledge it, to process it. So the main thing I'd say specifically for bad news is just giving them time, even if it's what feels like an awkward wait. In real life, you want to give them that time because the shock of the situation may mean they haven't processed it yet. And
never forget the warning shot. Just always start off, before you go into breaking that bad news, just tell them straight away that, okay, I don't have very good news for you today, and let that sink in. Like Sarana said, silence is really, really important to let them kind of process whatever emotions they might be feeling in that situation.
So just a side note, we do know as it's a pandemic, there's a lot of changes to both the med school curriculum and the process of getting into med school, and one of these has affected interviews. My brother actually did apply this year, and all of his MMIs and so-called semi-structured interviews were online. Do not let this throw you off. It is the same thing. They are looking for the same attributes as a medical student or about to be a medical student. And yes, your Wi-Fi connection may be dodgy, but they will take that into account. Even if it's not quite what you expected or what you've heard older years having to go through in their interviews, they're still going to give you a fair shot at your place and why you deserve to be in the medical school. Do not let that put you off. You will be just fine.
So thank you guys for watching our video, and I hope you find it useful in preparation for your med school interviews and for getting into med school. Good luck!
Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to our channel.
And follow us for more medicine related content.
Bye!